Okay, good evening. So we will start with the environment current affairs that has been there for the week. Okay. So this is the first issue, and this relates to directly to the section biodiversity and its conservation, right? So we have divided it into with respect to the biodiversity and its conservation. The name of this plant that you observe on the left hand side, this is Sikkim Sundari, okay, and it is called as a glass house plant, for the reason that it is translucent. Okay, translucent means yes, so this means that it is a medium in which you will have diffused light. Okay, you won't have an opaque surface also, you won't have a transparent surface also. So the news reads that a remarkable giant herb that transforms the harshest alpine environments into luminous towers of botanical adaptation. Okay, a very heavy line full of jargons. It means, what does it mean? First, alpine environments. Why are alpine environments called harsh? Temperature is lower. Okay, that means the biodiversity that is present there must have certain kind of adaptations. Okay, we talked about adaptations, variation adaptations. So they will have morphological adaptations. So these are some botanical adaptations that these Sikkim Sundari would exhibit, right? So first is the architecture. Okay, what is the architecture with respect to this? It is Reum nobile. It is also locally known as Padamchal or Sikkim Sundari, and it stands as a botanical marvel. Okay, at the height of 4,000 to 4,800 meters. I should know this, that altitude, because this is important with respect to the exam. At what altitude can I find these plants? Okay. The second thing is, when I'm considering alpine environment, when I'm saying alpine environment, I am talking about a range of things. I'm talking about low amount of temperature. Okay, I'm talking about low amount of rainfall. There might be precipitation, and that might be in the form of snowfall. Okay, and also I understand that with respect to the slopes, because it is at a very high altitude, I can have erosional agents also. Okay, that is, there would be wind and water. Okay, whatever limited water that is present, water that is the abiotic limiting factor. So this means that this kind of an alpine environment that provides for the harshest environment for these kind of plants, it is something that is avoided through the process of adaptation. Okay, so that is what it reads. It creates a living greenhouse protecting the delicate flowers from freezing winds and intense UV radiation. Okay, there is one more thing, UV radiation. Why do we talk about UV radiation? Because it is at a very high altitude and the exposure to sunlight is quite high in these areas, right? So when we say that it acts as a living greenhouse, it means that outside this region, outside the region of this plant, you will have colder climates, right? But within the plant itself, these translucent bracts, they act as a greenhouse. That is, it creates a greenhouse effect. What is a greenhouse effect? You know, that means it is going to trap the wave radiations, right? Now, where does it thrive? It is mainly in the Himalayas. Okay, along the trekking routes, you will find in North Sikkim, Nepal, Bhutan, Tibet, and Myanmar. Okay. So amongst these, what do I have to remember? I have to remember at what altitude. Okay, what is the kind of adaptation they have? What is the kind of effect that these translucent bracts will create for the plant survival? Okay. Where are they found? In these ranges. Okay. And now this is something very interesting. It says, a life of patience, a single spectacular bloom. Okay, there is one particular word that means monocarpic. What do you mean by monocarpic? Monocarpic fate means that it flowers only one time in its life and then it dies. Okay, that means it is its moment of glory in which it will have this one time flowering, only one cycle. Okay, the second thing is that it grows for a very, very long period of time, right? There is years of storage. When we say years of storage, there is 70 to 30 years in which it will just grow. Okay, 70 to 30 years as a low rosette, quietly accumulating energy. Okay, then there is dramatic transformation, that is referring to this bloom. Okay, that is referring to the transformation. A single season of explosive growth producing a towering pagoda like spike up of 2 meters tall. Okay, this means that 70 to 30 years up until now it is just accumulating energy. Okay, it is not a tall tree, it is not a tall plant. After that time you will have a transformation where you will have 2 meters growth immediately, right? That is in one season. Then whenever we talk about such kind of biodiversity being present, we also talk about the cultural heritage. Okay, what is the cultural heritage with respect to these kind of flowering plants? One, it is used as traditional traditional medicines, particularly in Himalayan and Tibetan. Okay. The second is culinary use. Culinary use, that it is also used as a food material. Okay, that is, it is consumed locally for its distinctive acidic flavor. Distinctive acidic flavor. It is known locally as chuka. That is a regional cuisine. Okay. And because it is so rare, and because the rarity is also something that is seen with respect to the harsh environment that it survives in, it is also a priority for conservation. Okay, protected habitats ensure this remarkable species continues to grace high altitude ecosystems, right? So these three things are there. So this was the part. Okay, so this is a short news, and the priority with respect to this, what all things do I have to remember? One, where is it found in the Himalayas? Second, what kind of effect it has? What are the other names? And whether it can be used as medicines or culinary use also. Okay, one part here where you have a monocarpic fate. Okay, this thing. Then we talk about solid waste management rules 2026. Okay, solid waste management rules is associated with the chapter of pollution and environmental degradation, this section. And amongst all of this umbrella act that we had, what is the umbrella act? Environmental Protection Act. And because of this, the various provisions, the various rules and regulations are being derived. Okay, we have various kinds of waste management rules, one of which is solid waste management rules. Okay, what are the other waste management rules that we have? Plastic waste, e-waste, then construction and demolition waste, hazardous waste, right? All such kind of waste management rules come under the Environmental Protection Act of 1986. Now there has been some amendments with respect to these rules, solid waste management rules of 2026. Okay, and this is going to enforce strict segregation, accountability and circular economy principles effective from 1st of April 2026. Okay, 2026. What do you understand by circular economy? Yes, good. Reuse, recycle. Okay, is it necessary to do this? It is necessary because we understand that a lot of the waste that we generate is quite useful, quite resourceful, and it is up to us that we can extract those resourceful elements from them, right? And then they can be fed back into the economy as raw materials, right? Now, whenever we talk about solid waste, we talk about a problem that the waste is unsegregated in nature. Okay, unsegregated. When we talk about this segregation at source, why do you feel that the segregation at source is important? Segregation at source is important because you have various kinds of different treatments. Different treatments are available with respect to the kind of waste you generate. For e-waste, you will have a different kind of treatment. For solid waste, when you classify it into wet waste, into dry waste, you will have a different kind of treatment, right? These treatments can be either natural, these treatments can be artificial, okay? Or you could also classify them as being expensive. Okay, with respect to natural, you could talk about biodegradability. Okay, it is basically understanding that how does the waste treatment meets the economy. Okay, how expensive is this process, right? So you have seen that there is waste to energy plants. There is something called as waste to energy plants. What is the requirement under this waste to energy plants? It requires a waste that has high calorific value. If you do not give such kind of a waste to these plants, then what will happen? It will not be economically viable to run such a system on low calorific value. How will I have low calorific value? If I do not segregate the waste on the source, right? This means that I mix wet waste and the dry waste. Okay, a lot of energy would be gone in this waste to energy plants just to dry up this wet waste, right? So this 4-stream segregation at source, this is the thing that they have worked on. Okay, first, whenever we talk about the waste management process, first is the source, then we have collection, then we have disposal and treatment. Okay, so this is the process of waste management. This is a cycle of waste management, right? So our point of contact of understanding waste management comes from the fact of understanding that most of the waste management is done through the informal sector. Okay, more than 90% of it is involved in the informal sector, and this segregation of source, if this is straightened, then all of the process will also fall through. Okay, all of the treatment processes will also be adherent, right? So they have said that there is an amendment to Solid Waste Management Act rules, and we are going to segregate it into 4 different sources. Okay, 4 different sources. One is the wet waste, other is the dry waste, okay, then sanitary waste and special care. Okay, so also they have associated what kind of treatment would I have with respect to these different wastes. Okay, so wet waste is all the kitchen waste, food, leftovers, fruit and vegetable peels. Okay, what is the treatment with respect to this? What kind of method should I go for? Should I go for a cheaper method? Right, composting. Okay, this means that you should handle this wet waste on your own. Or there is another process called biomethanation. Okay, that is in absence of oxygen, right? What about the dry waste? Dry waste, if I have examples of plastic, paper, metal, glass, it is sent to, the treatment is said that it is going into what? Reuse and recycle, because these are the substances that can be put back into the economy. Okay, these are particularly circular economy principles. Okay, so these dry waste have to be sent to material recovery facilities. Right? Then we talk about the biomedical or hazardous waste, that is sanitary waste. Okay, so diapers, sanitary napkins, so these have to be stored separately for safe disposal. Okay, understand this, that when we talk about the biomedical waste or when we talk about the hazardous waste, it is very important to segregate them, otherwise they will infect all the other waste as well, right? And this would be a difficult process because we have to go for disinfection of such kind of waste. Okay. Then special care. Special care will include bulb, batteries and medicines. You have to hand it over only to the authorized agencies which are designated as collection centers. Okay, collection centers. Okay, just very similar to your extended producer responsibility, right? The collection centers that we have PROs, okay, producer responsibility organization. What is EPR? EPR means that if you are selling any kind of electronic item or appliances to a customer, at the end of the life cycle, you are the one who is responsible to collect it back. Okay, for this you can charge a fee. Okay, so these four are the segregation. The segregation at source if done, the disposal and treatment would also be in line. Okay, polluter pays principle. What do you understand by polluter pays principle? It is the one who is paying, they cannot escape from their responsibility of paying for the cost of environmental degradation. Okay, polluter pays principle also important with respect to your climate change, right? Because the developed countries have polluted and they are not the ones that are paying, right? And accountability. So they have also identified within this change of rules, they have also identified one very important, bulk waste generators. Who are the bulk waste generators? Okay, first of all, again, where are we working at? Source, collection, treatment and disposal. Where are we working now? Collection, right? Segregation at source is done, collection. So it is saying that bulk waste generators, I have quantified it within these rules. We have quantified and have said that entities with a floor area of greater than 20,000 meter square, water consumption greater than 40,000 liters per day, or waste generation greater than equal to 100 kg per day, classified as bulk waste generators. Out of these, okay, these two can be easy to remember, but definitely try to remember this part. Okay, 100 kg per day. If you are generating this much amount of waste, then you would be classified as a bulk waste generator. Okay, and why is this important? Why is it important to identify them? It is like, it is important because 30% share of total waste is from bulk waste generators itself, right? So if we identify the source, it would be easier for us to collect, right? So we have identified who are the bulk waste generators at first. Okay, with respect to water pollution, we talk about point source and non-point source. Similarly, these are the point source, okay, when we talk about the solid waste. Then environmental compensation. So environmental compensation, we talk about with respect to environmental compensation, we are talking about EPA 1986 that drafts, that gives the power to these rules. And within this, we have CPCB, that is Central Pollution Control Board. And at the state level, I have State Pollution Control Board, right? So these guidelines, the guidelines under the solid waste management rules, these are enforced by whom? It is enforced, these the CPCB would be the ones that would be framing the guidelines, and SPCBs are the ones that would be implementing it at the ground level. Okay, any kind of violation, any kind of non-compliance will attract levies based on violation severity. Okay, this is an important statistics that you can note. 1.85 lakh tons daily as per CPCB 2023-24. It has said that there has been generation of 1.85 lakh tons of solid waste daily. right? Now, circular economy and landfill restrictions. Okay, there are, what do you understand by landfill? Landfill basically means that the area of the land is dug out and the waste is filled inside, and then it is again covered with the soil particles. Okay, and then you go on dumping waste over this land again and again. Okay, so this landfill is responsible for having, because it has anaerobic conditions, what happens? There's anaerobic conditions, plus it is embedded in soil. Two things will happen. One, CH4 release, that is a major cause of fire. Then with respect to soil, you will have contamination of groundwater, right? Because these are not lined. For that we need sanitary landfills. Okay, so this means that all the pathogens also, because if there is rainfall on these landfills, there would be pathogens that will infect and contaminate the groundwater, right? So this rule says that this kind of a practice has to be stopped, right? Landfills are a source of fire, they are a source of contamination, they are a source of air pollution also. So we have to stop that. Okay, so it says that there is limits on the landfill, that is, it is restricted only to non-recyclable and inert waste only. Okay, inert waste, what does inert mean? That it is not going to have any effect on the contamination of groundwater. Only those kind of waste, that is something which is not recyclable, that is not able to put into the circular economy, you cannot derive anything out of it. Okay, and it is unreactive in nature. Then RDF mandate, what do you understand by RDF? RDF means refuse derived fuel. Okay, by fuel we understand that this is something that is related to your waste to energy plants. Means that if I can derive from a waste that has high calorific value the energy levels. Okay, so this refuse derived fuel has to be increased. It has to be, usage has to be increased from 5 to 15% over the 6 years. Okay, over 6 years, which is cement and waste to energy plants, they must start using refuse derived fuel. Why is it necessary? Because waste to energy is something that is despised. Okay, it is quite protested by the residents who are living in the vicinities of the waste to energy plants. Okay, because of high volume of waste. Second, it is going to release a lot of chemicals also. Okay, then legacy waste, what does it mean? Old dump sites. Okay, now this is for the future part, but for the waste that has already been dumped, what do you do about that? You go to the process of biodegradation. You talk about recycling and reuse through the process of biomining, through the process of bioremediation. Okay, that is, you are using the microorganisms first with respect to biomining to extract metals that are important with respect to the economy. Bioremediation, you are going for degradation of using the microbes, using degrading the pollutants that are present in the environment. Okay, bioremediation like phytoremediation, phytovolatilization, right? These are the methods. Okay, now the implementation framework. One, there would be a state level committee. It would be chaired by a chief secretary. It would be to oversee the policy implementation and coordination across department. One is this. Then you have, similar to something as we were talking about extended producer responsibility, you now have extended BWG responsibility. Bulk waste generator. Bulk waste generators were the ones who were generating how much amount of waste? 100 kilograms per day. So they have an extended responsibility that they must process wet waste on site or obtain responsibility certificate if not feasible. Okay, they have given them a choice. Okay, a bulk waste generator must first, the segregation of at the source should take place of wet and dry waste, and with respect to wet waste on site means at their own place, they should have a mechanism for composting or biomethanation. Okay. Then hilly areas and islands. Hilly areas and islands, because it is seen that a lot of tourists will go there and they will deposit wastes. So local bodies can levy user fees on tourist and regulate visitor inflow based on waste management capacity. That is, extra fees can be levied on the tourists. Even the tourist can be charged with respect to how much of waste is being generated on an average. Okay, that capacity to regulate such kind of waste is also something that can create higher amount of user fees for them. Okay, what are the enforcement bodies? We have seen SPCB and pollution control committees. Whose guidelines? CPCB's guidelines. Okay, remember this part. Remember the state level committees. Okay, remember this extended BWG responsibility. It can come. Okay, in this year's prelims. Then there is online tracking system also, digital portal for real-time monitoring of waste flows. Okay. Now the next news, it is about Republic Day 2026, Bactrian camels march into history. Okay, this is related to the topic of biodiversity and its conservation. Okay, particularly with what do I have to understand in this news? One, why they were used in the Republic Day. Okay, this means what kind of connection does India have with respect to this biodiversity and with respect to utilization of Silk Road, ancient Silk Road. Okay. The second aspect is with respect to the adaptation or the species or the subspecies of camels. Okay. So second part is more important with respect to environment. The first part is basically understanding the ancient history, how it connects to this. Okay. So the first thing is why they were used in the Republic Day. First is because they have links, Central Asian links, okay, and particularly with respect to India, it is Ladakh. Okay, Ladakh is the region where the Bactrian camels, they were historically an independent kingdom connected to trans-Eurasian trade networks. Okay, so it was Ladakh, the point of contact of trade. Okay, so there is a connect in the history part. Then crossroads of civilization. So it linked India with China, these countries, China, Central Asia, Persia, West Asia, facilitating what all things? Goods, communication, religion. Okay, these many things were being exchanged. Okay. Then animal contingent, that is who all were the animals that were walking beside these Bactrian camels. Alongside Zaskar ponies, indigenous army dogs led by Remount and Veterinary Corps. Okay, so basically I have to understand that these are frontier ecologies. What do I mean by frontier ecologies? the ones that are present in the border areas. Okay, so these are particularly because in the border areas we have adverse conditions, and adverse conditions require adaptations, right? So it is focusing on two things. One is the Central Asian link. Okay, how was the exchange with respect to the different kinds of civilizations? How is the change, how is the connect that is observed with India, which area of which part of the country? And third, with respect to adaptations in the adverse climates. Okay, so with respect to the camelids, okay, camelids, when we talk about, this is at the level of family. Then we talk about genus and species, right? So we have three genus within this, genus. So one is domesticated Bactrian camels, that is Camelus bactrianus. It shares a common ancestor with single humped dromedaries, that is Camelus dromedarius. Okay, so one is ठीक है, and then you have Ferus, Camelus ferus. Okay, okay, so they have a domestication timeline also. So basically all of these are either the common ancestor or you will have some kind of relation between them. Okay, common ancestor, or you could say in the biological terms a distant cousin. Okay, for the purpose of exam you should just remember that these three genus are there. Okay, one of which is having dumbbell hump. Okay, this is the one that you have as single humped. Okay, Bactrianus is the one with the double hump. Okay, so they were domesticated 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, and in places of Uzbekistan and West Kazakhstan. Right? What is how is the name Bactrian derived from? Modern bulk Afghanistan. It was ancient bacteria, that is modern bulk Afghanistan, that is known in Sanskrit as Bhalika or Tukhra. Okay, you don't have to remember this, but just understand where was the location. It was in Afghanistan. Okay, that is, they can ask you where was it a native of. Okay, where did it dominate? One more thing that you can, just for your concept, what is domestication? That is, you are training them for a particular habit. Okay, they were something that were found in the wild and they were not trained. It is through the process of domestication. How? Behaviorally, right? We talked about behavioral adaptation. It means that you are introducing some kind of behaviors. It is a method in biotechnology. Right? Domesticated 5,000 to 6,000 years. It means that it is embedded within their genetic code. Okay. Then these things are important. These things are important. The era with respect to understanding how they have, this is with respect to understanding of the trade route. This timeline that is drawn below. Okay, and there was Silk Road. This you have to see. Other than that, what is they were how the adaptations were. Adaptations. Okay. What are the different adaptations? Even in the class we have seen. First is they can carry a lot of weight. Okay, that is why they were used in the trade routes in the first place, right? But how much amount of weight and how much kilometers per hour or per day they could travel? So they are approximately, you could remember, 180 kgs and about 35 to 40 kilometers per day, right? Approximately they can ask you to have a range of when will they reach from Afghanistan to India, right? If they are walking 35 to 40 kilometers a day. The second thing is extreme adaptation. Extreme adaptation, uniquely adapted to survive extreme cold and heat, prolonged thirst, hunger, and saline water consumption in harsh terrains. We have seen this with respect to camels in the class also. What is the kind of mechanism they have? They have some kind of internal water generation. Okay, this is because of the humps that they have. Okay, Indian camels would have a single hump, right? These are the Bactrian ones that have double humps, which says that they will have lipids that will get converted into water internally. Okay, even with respect to adaptations, we can see that they are able to consume a lot of water in one go. Third, what are the different adaptations? They will have longer legs to escape the heat from the ground. Another adaptation is the structure of their mouth. Okay, because they would have vegetation that are shrubs, ones that do not look nutritious to us, they are nutritious to them. Okay, they have such kind of mouth adaptations that can even have break down these shrubs. Okay, terrain mastery. Okay, where are the areas in which they are found? One is in the Gobi Desert and the other is Taklaman deserts. Okay, Pamir and Tian Shan mountains. Okay. ठीक है. So with respect to camels, there was once a question in 2016 on Kharai camel, right? Kharai camel, because it can swim in water for long distances, right? So this is the ship of desert. Okay. Now connectivity, these things can be asked. They would not ask you what were the products, but just so that you know, they transported jade, metals, fruits like watermelon, luxury goods across Eurasia, and through which? Through Yumen, Jade Gate, and Donghyang via Bactrian camel caravans. Okay, this is very, very important that there were exchange of ideas and religion. Okay, because the connectivity, okay, connectivity, once it is economical essentiality that one region would trade with the other. Okay, and from this exchange will also emerge the connectivity with respect to the people. Okay, people to people connect that we talk about even with respect to neighborhood first policy in India. Okay, so people to people connect, and especially the Buddhist monks Fa Hen and Hyun Sang. Okay, these are named differently, but I think you would have seen these spellings, right? Fa Hen, right? They are differently spelled. So very important personalities in the ancient and medieval. So what they were a proponent of? Transmission of Buddhism. Okay, and it is in the historical evidence that Fa Hen has described this desert, Taklaman desert crossings, dependent upon the caravan support. It means that there is historically an evidence of this also, and India at this point of time in the Republic Day is trying to find those kind of relations. Okay, that is, we are trying to go in the history and finding our Central Asian links through ecology, right? Through ecology we are trying to find out what kind of Central Asian link we had. Okay. Now this is sound based helium leak detection. Okay, helium has an important thing. It is abundant and also scarce. Where is it abundant? It is abundant in universe. Okay, second most abundant after hydrogen. Right? It is scarce where? On Earth. Okay, on Earth. And therefore, only the countries that have resources of helium, they would be the ones that would be owning the supply chains also. Okay. Now, since it is in scarcity, this means that its economic value is high. Okay. And these are the ones that are used extensively in the industrial processes. Okay. And because they are used in the industrial processes, there is a possibility of them leaking. Right. So there has been an invention, or you could say there has been a development which says that there is a way in which I can detect helium leak in the industrial processes. Okay. And this is not based on any kind of reaction. Okay. For example, you have litmus test, right, where you understand what is the color based on the pH level. Okay. So there is no reaction that is going on. It is just utilizing the sound waves. Sound waves are being utilized in detecting if helium is being emitted or not. Okay. So how does it work? You again, you don't have to go into the depth of it, right? You just have to understand this part: speed measurement. Okay, speed measurement. That is, helium will alter the sound velocity within the sensor, causing measurable frequency shift in trapped acoustic waves. Okay. First would be the trapping mechanism. Okay, you trap the sound waves. Second would be measuring the speed. Okay. It goes with the understanding, when I calculate the speed, or I can say velocity of the wave, then this will result into different frequency, and this frequency can then be transmitted and understood as how much amount of helium gas or quantity has leaked. Okay, so this means causing measurable frequency shifts. Okay, so I have to understand only this part, where I talk about what is the speed at which this gas is being released. Secondly, how does it change the frequency of the sound waves. Okay. So properties and significance. You have seen this second most abundant element in the universe after hydrogen. Is it does it have a smell? No. Okay, it is odorless, tasteless, and non-toxic noble gas. Remember this, noble gas. Okay, that is, it is unreactive. Okay, so if they ask you on the leakage of helium gas, there could be some man-made disaster. Is this a truth statement? It means because it is unreactive, right? So helium leak is there, but the cause is different. We understand it from the perspective of supply challenge. Why do we not want this to leak? The reason is a supply challenge. Okay, and also terrestrial rarity. It is rare in Earth's atmosphere. Okay. These are some critical industrial applications that you can see. One is medical imaging. Okay, they are used in MRI, aerospace, rocket fuel systems. With respect to welding, they are also used as a shielding gas when the welding is done there. Okay, deep sea operations, component and breathing mixtures for commercial diving, and hyperbaric means high pressure applications. Okay, and leak detection in vacuum systems and sealed enclosures. Lifting gas. Okay, this so you know, lifting gas. Okay, helium balloons. You would have also seen some videos in which people will use this gas and they will have a different voice, right? That is what is also being used here. Next, coming to the state of finance for nature 2026. Okay, very interesting report. What does it say? That for destruction versus conservation. Okay, conservation for nature, for every dollar that you're spending for conservation, you are spending $30 to destruct the nature. Okay, this is a very important contrast, because people or private organizations or the developed countries, they do not easily shed enough amount of money for the conservation, but for the destruction the money is available. Okay, we will also see how it is more inclined towards the private agencies. Okay, so this means that problem is not money. Okay, problem is not technology transfer. Okay, problem is not financing. The problem is what your goals are, right? And how do you allocate this finance, whether you are allocating it to the conservation activities, whether you are going for the destruction activities. Okay, so this report, the state of finance for nature 2026, this points out to what kind of nature based negative aspects or nature based positive aspects you have created over a period of time, right? Okay, even with respect to economic survey, you would have seen that there is mention of this fact. Okay, that you cannot, the finances that are available, that the developed countries can give out, they are not being extended to the developing countries, simply because the economy is not resilient enough. Okay, even if they give it on the basis of carbon credits, then also the economy is not resilient. The exchange rate is not as stabilized as with respect to the other hard currencies. Okay, the market is not very deep. The bond markets are not very deep. Okay, so understanding this, that what are the patterns of finance when it comes to nature conservation. Okay, because we have been talking about it for a very long time. Since 1972 we have been talking about it, but why has the finance not found the appropriate channel for conservation? Okay, so these are very important terms that you can use in your mains. One is nature negative finance. Okay, it is exactly as the word tells us, nature positive finance. This means that something that is utilized for creating destruction of nature. How much amount of dollars are there? $7.3 trillion. $7.3 trillion. This is 7% of what? Of global GDP. Okay, this means you are spending 7% of global GDP for nature negative finance, something that destroys the nature. Okay, with respect to nature positive finance, 220 billion. 220 billion. Okay, so you can see that this amount, if you multiply it by 30, you will get this. Okay, this is 30 times the amount that is going for the nature positive finance. Okay, now understanding this, nature based solutions. Okay, nature based solutions. Nature based solutions are what? Eliminating the environmental threats using the nature itself. Okay, so for example, for tsunamis we have mangroves, right? This is a nature based solution. Okay, for suppose say for pollution or for global warming, afforestation. Okay, so it is said that the government sources, they dominate NBS financing. This means that it is only the government's 90% of public funds. Okay, 90% are public funds with private investment at just 10%. It means that the contribution here might be distributed, okay, with respect to private as well as public. But with respect to the NBS, it is the public funds that are dominating. This means that there is a considerable gap, financial gap, when it comes to private investment. Okay, this type of a pattern tells me that why is private investment pulling back on investing in nature-based solutions. Okay, there is a target. Target is $571 billion by 2030. This kind of an investment is required to meet the target. There are a set of Rio conventions. Okay, 1992 Rio Convention targets. To meet this, you need to have $571 billion by 2030. Okay. Now here are some nature negative drivers. Okay, nature negative drivers that are costing $7.3 trillion. One is the private sector itself. Okay, private sector has $4.9 trillion in energy, utilities and materials. These are the industries that are more responsible for nature negative finance. Okay, 4.9. This means almost 5 on 7. This is 1.4. Okay, 5 on 7. Approximately 70 to 80%. All right. So this much is contributed by private sector. How much of nature-based solution they are contributing to? 10%. Right? How much of negative finance they are contributing to? 70 to 80%. Then environmentally harmful subsidies. That is, it is not just the government. It is not just the private investment. It is also the subsidies that are actually funding for this environmental destruction. Okay, this is to the tune of 2.4 trillion annually. Okay, now with respect to subsidies, when we talk about the subsidies, it is the fossil fuels. You will get subsidies for fossil fuels. Okay, that means there would be more amount of carbon dioxide emissions, more amount of greenhouse gas effect. Okay. Then you have unsustainable agriculture and water subsidies. So you have to understand that subsidies, among subsidies, you will have fossil fuel subsidies, agriculture subsidies and water subsidies. All of this will contribute to nature negative finance. Okay, this sums up the $2 trillion out of the $7 trillion. Okay. Now, now what is the solution? What is nature-based solution? So first is mangrove restoration. These are the real world examples. Okay, you understand, I think, nature-based solutions. That is, we are protecting and conserving. These are the principles on which the nature-based solutions are based upon. Okay, protect and conserve, sustainably manage and restore ecosystems. Okay, whatever has been degraded, you try to restore them. Whatever is there, you sustainably manage them. You do not over exploit them, and then protect and conserve. Okay, what are the examples that we have? One is mangrove restoration. Okay, mangroves for the tsunamis. Then we have agroforestry. Agroforestry means that you have a combination of trees as well as the crops. Then green urban spaces, because we talk about the urban heat island effect. Okay, and to have such kind of solutions, we need to have different plants, okay, within that area. Urban forestry, Miyawaki method, right? Then what is the critical challenge? Okay, like we were talking about the economic survey. Again, these are some of the issues, okay, that comes because of the economics of it. Understanding economics and understanding what is the pattern or behavior of the investors, behavior of the private sector. Okay, first is high due diligence cost. What is due diligence? It means that you are assessing what this cost will lead to, what are the returns that I will have on these costs. Okay, so like banks will also conduct due diligence, right? So site-specific biological complexity requires expensive assessment. And these expensive assessments are not backed by any historical data. Okay, so it says that I have a nature-based solution. Would it be effective or not? Would I get enough returns on my investments? ROI? Okay, this is the question that the private sector will ask. Okay, and you do not have an answer. You haven't assessed it, and if you are going for assessment, it is already very expensive. Okay, with no concrete, no certainty of results. Okay, so this data only has to be extrapolated. Okay, that is, you observe on a graph, you observe that 3 patterns are there and you extrapolate it to the 4th and the 5th point. Okay, so this is high due diligence cost. Then liquidity constraints. This is a major problem. Okay, whenever we talk about infrastructure, we talk about the stalling of projects. Okay, if you have big infrastructure projects and you stall them because of various kinds of reasons, whether it is legality, whether it is with respect to the life cycle of the project, if you do not give the returns on investment on a quicker date, the investors are not going to put their money into it. Okay, it is like trapping their money. So liquidity constraints means how easily the cash can flow. So nature investments are inherently illiquid and long term, that is 10 to 20 years. Most of the investors would want their money back after with the returns after 5 to 6 years. Okay, it creates a lock-in risk that repels private equity seeking 3 to 5 year horizons. Okay, so if I have invested 100 rupees, I would want back 200 rupees after 5 years. Okay, and it is saying that I cannot give you, I can give you after 20 years, I will give you 200 rupees. Okay, but by that time inflation will eat my money, right? Then currency and sovereign risk, very important issue here, also mentioned in the economic survey. High impact NBS potential lies in global south while capital sits in global north, exposing investors to foreign exchange volatility and sovereign risk, requiring expensive hedging. What does this mean? It means that wherever you can have these kind of NBS solutions, the potential solutions, they are in the global south, in the developing countries. Okay, where does the fund lie? It is in the global north, right? So this means that any kind of funding that has to happen in the developing states, it will be exposing the investors to what? Foreign exchange volatility, right? This means that they would be investing and they would be getting a currency that is depreciating. Okay, so currency exchange rate operates on 2 levels. One, if the investment goes higher, then your money would appreciate. Second, the currency exchange also. Okay, so hedging means that you are diverting the risk which is associated with currency appreciation or depreciation. Lack of standardized data. Okay, so for example, we have carbon credits. We can quantify how much amount of carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide equivalent is being produced by a country. Okay, there is clear-cut evaluation. We can understand global warming potential, we can calculate it. But with respect to nature-based solution, it is not very easy to measure. Nature is hard to measure. Investors will lack standardized metrics. Okay, what kind of metrics I should use? What kind of ROI for biodiversity projects? It prevents the mainstream capital mobilization, right? Because whenever you go to an investor, they will ask you, what kind of data do you have? Okay, what is the kind of money that I can expect to earn on investing? Okay, so these are the critical challenges in scaling NBS finance. Scaling NBS finance means, what do you mean by scaling? It means that at a certain level it is possible. Okay, there are some good-willed citizens, good-willed investors who will go for it, but it is not appealing to the masses at a large scale. Okay, it is not a very attractive proposition. Okay, then India's nature finance paradox. One is nature negative subsidies. It is not just everyone else. We are also funding nature negative subsidies. What are those? One, if you own a land, you can go for groundwater pumping, and secondly, the electricity would be provided by the government itself. Okay, you would have seen in one of the schemes of economy, one of the schemes you have Krishi Sinchai Yojana, and you also have solarization of irrigation pumps, right? Chemical fertilizers comes in the form of nutrient based subsidy scheme. Okay, nutrient based subsidy scheme. Okay, these are much more than nature based, nature positive allocations, right? Basically we are paying more to degrade the environment. Public finance. Public finance. Okay, it is again, as we have seen, that public finance contributes 90% at the global level. Okay, similarly, private sector with respect to India contributing to nature positive uh, allocations, it is quite negligible even at the level of India. High nature dependency. Over 50% workforce engaged in agriculture creates exceptional vulnerability. Ecosystem collapse would trigger systemic financial instability faster than industrialized nations. Okay, so this means that a lot of people, because we are talking about nature based solutions, we are talking about nature positive and nature negative. Okay, so we are talking about a combination of both of these things. If you are pressing on the resources that is limited and increasing the negative, then it would be affecting your agrarian community also. Okay, they are dependent upon the nature. Green taxonomy void. Regulatory gap allows financial institutions to lend to projects claiming sustainability but actually nature negative, hindering genuine global capital flow. What does this mean? It is like greenwashing, right? Greenwashing. That is, how do you term this? Okay, whether you are utilizing it as a facade, okay, it is a mask that you are holding, but beneath you know that this is a nature negative solution that you have. Okay, so current initiatives, you already have seen these things. These are part of your NAPCC, that is National Action Plan for Climate Change. These are missions under that. Very important, nature transition X curve. What is the X curve? Have you heard of this transition X curve? It is like this. This is your transition X curve. Okay, it is used in the context of nature, saying that we should create environment where the positive, nature positive goes inside and negative goes outside. Okay, transition X curve. So it says that rapidly phase out nature negative flows while scaling nature positive markets. Okay. Price environmental cost. This means that have a solution. Okay. Try to make it much more quantitative. Understand what are the parameters on which I can say that these are environmental costs that you have to bear. Okay, just like carbon credits. Then mandatory disclosures. Okay, that is mandatory disclosures, that is so that we can eliminate any kind of greenwashing. Innovative financial instruments. Innovative, we talk about green bonds. Okay, green bonds, particularly that are attractive towards the environmentalists, the ones who are more concerned about the nature. Okay, bonds are the instruments. What are bonds? Financial instruments that are there for a very, very long term. For example, I invest 10 lakhs, then they would be returning some amount investments, okay, on the bonds that I've invested in. So they are saying scale green bonds, sustainability linked loans, biodiversity credits, and first loss guarantee to attract mainstream investors. Okay, this means that if you give more amount of coupon rate on these bonds, then the investors would be much more attracted. towards investing in these financial instruments. Okay, green bonds are the ones that will invest in green infrastructure. Okay, in nature positive markets. Then standardized metrics, mean species abundance beyond CO2 focus to prevent greenwashing. Okay, integrated policy alignment. Okay, again, this is with respect to understanding governance, that you should not have a silo approach. Okay, all of this should be combined. There must be elimination of duplication of efforts. Okay, finance, agriculture, energy ministries must align to Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework targets. Okay, Kunming Montreal GBF targets. Do you remember what it is? We first had Aichi biodiversity targets. Okay, these were the strategic goals that we have with respect to the biodiversity. Okay, later we talk about till 2030. Okay, these were the targets that were given. Okay, there are targets like 30 into 30, that is protecting 30% of land and oceans by 2030. Okay, so I think this is it. Okay, so we are done. Thank you.